So I got a letter through the door the other day from the DVLA, the UK Driver and Vehicle Licensing Authority, basically saying that my days as an EV driver, and to be fair, that's not that many days because I've only had this Tesla for a few months, of paying zero road tax and being totally exempt from it were coming to an end. So this is not entirely shocking news, but it's thrown up a few frustrations and, cause for wanting to rant a little bit, but also what potential implications this might have on the car market in this country. So I thought I'd share some of my thoughts with you on this. So buckle up and let's get into it. Now, if you've got an EV, chances are you've got the same letter, but I'm going to start by reading a couple of lines from the letter, and then I'm going to leave a link to the DVLA website where you can actually read the full script about this in case you haven't already done so. But that's not really the whole point of this video, but let's just start with this. We are writing to let you know that as the registered keeper of the above electric vehicle, from the 1st of April 2025, you will need to pay vehicle tax in the same way as existing drivers of petrol and diesel vehicles. This vehicle tax change will apply to all new and existing electric cars, vans and motorcycles. Okay, that's clear. Now, it is important to acknowledge that this is definitely something we saw coming. And back in the 2022 August statement by the ex-Tory Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, he said that basically exemptions for EVs for road tax was going to end in April 2025. So we knew this was coming, but the details of it now are hitting home. But I'm willing to bet that a lot of EV owners probably had forgotten that. And like me, were just thinking they were all smug that they were not paying any road tax and really kind of getting used to the fact that they didn't have that cost to bear. And so getting this letter, even if it was kind of warned that it was coming, still kind of sucks. But I don't think fundamentally, if you already have converted to having an EV, you're going to go away from having an EV over new taxation that's coming in. And just to be clear, I'm not somebody who thinks that because I drive an EV, I shouldn't pay any road tax. It's been nice to not pay it, but I kind of expected at some point I would have to pay it, and I think that's fair because, well, we all have to contribute towards the maintenance and the wear and tear on the roads. It's not just about emissions. So I'm okay with that, but I also think people that want to drive like a V8 diesel, yeah, they should be penalised for that as well. But these changes are quite significant. So I'm going to go into a bit more detail here about these in case anybody's missed this. New zero emissions cars registered on or after the 1st of April 2025 will be liable to pay the lowest first year rated VED, vehicle excise duty, which applies to vehicles with CO2 emissions of 1 to 50 grams per kilometre, which is currently £10 a year. From the second year of registrations onwards, they will move to the standard rate, which is currently £190 a year. Zero emissions cars registered between the 1st of April 2017 and the 31st of March 2025 will also pay the standard rate. The ECS expensive car supplement exemption for electric vehicles is due to end in 2025 as well. New zero emissions cars registered on or after the 1st of April 2025 will therefore be liable for this supplement. The expensive car supplement currently applies to cars with a list price of over £40,000 and is currently £410 a year, and it's payable for 5 years. So this means the EV drivers with an expensive car will pay up to £600 a year for road tax. Zero and low emissions cars first registered between the 1st of March 2001 and the 30th of March 2017, currently in Band A, will move to the Band B rate, currently £20. Right, so a couple of key takeaways from this. First of all is that EVs are technically getting a bit of a break in the first year of its new registration life compared to diesel and petrol cars. So you're only going to pay the low rate, which is currently £10. But from year 2, the playing field is leveled out pretty much completely. And obviously, if you have a much higher CO2 emitting car for petrol and diesel, then the price is going to get higher from there. But the standard rate is going to be the same. But when they say the current rate is £190, you got to think that's going to go up because inflation is a bitch and it is a thing, and also pretty much every company under the sun is using it as an excuse to raise prices anyway. So you can only assume that that price is only going one way. So it's going to be probably over £200 a year as the standard rate from 2025. So if you add that on to the expensive car tax, which may well also go up as a base rate, things are going to get quite expensive. But the other key thing that's particularly relevant to me in this car is that used EVs registered after 2017 are going to now pay tax. It's not like they're going, it's just new cars onwards. They are backdating this so that people that drive EVs already are going to start paying tax. So if you were somebody who didn't really realize that things were going to change, and at some point you bought an EV thinking, I just don't pay tax, or the dealer was really clever and tried to hide that fact from you, then yeah, that could be a bit of a shock. And this expensive car supplement, I always hated this one. I just kind of feel like it was just an extra way to tax wealthier people. And it was like, if your car's over £40,000, we're going to get you for it. And really, if that was kind of deemed an expensive car, that might be one thing. But what can you actually get for 40 grand these days as a new car? 2/3 of EVs are well over 40 grand list price. So you're basically saying that the majority of EVs already are going to, by default, have that extra tax applied to it, which is probably going to go up from the £410 it currently is. So that's a real stinger, and I do think that's going to probably shake things up quite a bit. Certainly for me though, I'm going to have this thing for probably maximum another 2.5 years. And at that point, when I probably go to get another EV, it'll probably be the Tesla Model 3 Highland. I am going to be looking for one that was registered before April 2025, because I'm not paying that expensive car tax bollocks. That is an absolute nonsense. That just needs to go, but it's not going to. But that is just an absolute stealth tax, and I hate it. So I am not paying it, and so I will avoid. I don't generally buy new cars anyway, but I do not want to be paying that. That is a serious supplement to have to chuck into the mix there. So yeah, I think you could see a bit of a spike in the used EV market for a while, because a lot of people will be thinking the same. I mean, £600 a year to tax an EV that doesn't produce any emissions. I don't think costs have gone up that much, really, have they? Let's be honest. So the government are doing pretty well out of this one, I think. And when you're driving, you know, behind a old sports car that's bellowing smoke out its exhaust, it's a blooming V6 or a V8, and you're like, yeah, you're not really paying any tax. That kind of stings a little bit, because we're still both using the road, but I am doing way less damage to the environment than you are. And yet because your car's older, you're getting away with it, you know? So there's a lot of grey areas here. And another part of the market that I think might see a bit of a spike is probably the leasing market, because when you lease a car, the tax is rolled into the deal because you don't own the car, and so the tax is paid by the owner of the car, which is the leasing company. And so when you see your price and you go, oh, it's a good price, and well, I don't have to pay tax. Well, you do, you just aren't really seeing it because it's rolled into the price and you're paying it off monthly. I think a lot of people subconsciously look at that and think that's a better deal, but when you see a deal where you're like, oh, I've got to pay that, and then all these individual costs, even if the total is the same, I think a lot of people subconsciously go, that 600 quid to tax my new EV, poke it, you know? So I think there's going to be some people that might look at that and think, I'm not doing that, I'll go leasing instead. And the same could be said for salary sacrifice schemes at companies, you know? The benefit in kind is going to start creeping up a little bit. It's not going to be 2% as it has been to now. It's going to go up by 1% each year to 2028. But I do still think, again, people see that all bundled together and all the costs and the taxes, and they think, that's just I'll pay that one fee and off I go, and my maintenance is included as well. Brucey bonus. And let's try and keep the comments non-political, but it's hard to see that whether it was another Tory government or a Labour government, after the carrot had been dangled that we're going to tax EVs, that either government were going to miss that opportunity. So financially, I kind of get that it's an easy win and they're always going to do it. But when you look at it from the other perspective, and the whole reason why we were getting no tax on EVs was to incentivize us to go away from fossil fuel cars. And so it's a pretty big number you were not having to pay that you're now going to have to pay, particularly for new cars. And so that incentive is very well eroded. I mean, the first year's a little bit better versus petrol and diesel, and you don't have CO2 emissions penalties on top of that, but it's still quite a big whack of tax you're still needing to consider now. And so will that make a big difference to how people think about adopting EVs? I don't know. I'm really curious to see how this is all going to pan out. But if I was the government and setting policy, I possibly would have done things slightly different here. They've gone all out to basically make as much money out of this as they could get away with by the look of things. But I think if you really want to incentivize people to move to zero emissions cars, the gap between EVs now and petrol and diesels on road tax feels a little bit too close. I would have been much more happy, and this is not me personally, because I'm okay with paying what I've got to pay. It's just overall, I think if you were to differentiate it slightly better, just say the standard rate for EVs is like £100 or £120 or something like that, just some sort of discount that you can clearly see against the equivalent petrol and diesel before you add on CO2 emissions. and then maybe look at this expensive car tax bollocks, because a 40 grand car in today's money is not an expensive car. So really, that is nonsense, and so that needs to go up. So that needs to be like 45 or 50 grand. I'll never put it up that high, but that should go up a bit to deal with inflation, because if everything else is going to be subject to inflation, well, so should that. So that should be higher as well as a starting point, and that might mean that more people can still afford to buy an EV without having to pay that extra surcharge, because they are bloody expensive. Most of them are late 40s just to get a basic one. So that is a problem, and yeah, I just think the government maybe could have done a better job with this. If this isn't a major incentive to buy an EV, then well, what are they, you know? The cost of charging in some places is getting ridiculous. Obviously, home charging is the way forward, but if you are somebody who does a lot of long distance travel, well, you're gonna have to use superchargers that eventually end up costing the same as an equivalent tank of diesel, you know? So if that's not somehow capped, then, you know, where does that end? And the cost of the cars themselves is really high. So I'm just trying to think, if I'm somebody who's a skeptic about, I'm not getting rid of my diesel, you know, if I'm one of them, like, what are the real incentives about this? And if you don't understand what's also good about an EV in other ways, like the acceleration, then I don't know, I'm trying to think, how are the government really going to do this to really get people to make the switch? And if net zero is that important, well, guys, time to get your thinking caps on. But what do I know? I'm just a ranty Scottish guy with a little YouTube channel who likes to talk about cars, and yeah, I hope this was an interesting one for you, and I'd love to have a bit of debate about it in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, please do give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe as well, because there's loads more reviews, news, stories, etc. coming up on the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.